The Nintendo Switch Lite first launched over 2 years ago now, being the first new option to the Switch line, and a console that was identical to the normal Switch, but without the ability to connect it to your TV. At $200, a full $100 less than the normal Switch, and $150 less than the newer OLED Switch, the Nintendo Switch Lite might be a tempting option, especially if you prefer to play games on the go. But is it truly worth it? Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91Tech, and to answer the question right off the bat, yeah, the Switch Lite is absolutely worth the price tag of $200. However, for the vast majority of players, I do believe that the regular Switch at $300 is more worth it, and in this video we'll be discussing exactly why that is, as well as why the Switch Lite is still a fantastic system for the price. Why is the Switch Lite an amazing console? The answer is as simple as you might guess. It's a Nintendo Switch, and it plays Switch games. Of course, it's going to be great, even if it does lack the actual switching element. And for some people, that's not such a bad thing. I imagine there are those within households that already own a Switch, and you might want your own personal system. Or maybe you just have no desire to play games on the big screen, and you could be lying in bed instead. And I'll admit, the portability aspect of the Switch is very easily addicting. Even with my own TV on my normal Switch, I've often found myself playing portably anyways without even consciously thinking about why I was doing so. The biggest issue with the Switch Lite is that there's zero choice when it comes to TV connection. You can't buy a dock later, so if you invest in the Lite, you're stuck using it portably only forever. If you ever change your mind and want to hook it up to the big screen, you're just plain out of luck. I feel like most would come to regret that decision eventually, or even end up buying another Switch just for that functionality. The Switch Lite itself is awesome, and even now is still my favorite design of any Switch that we've seen thus far. And I suppose I should give an explanation on why mine looks different. This is the turquoise Switch Lite, one of the color options along with gray, yellow, coral, and blue, as well as a couple Pokemon themed special editions. A good while ago, a friend of mine had swapped out the casing on his Switch for a kind of NES themed one, which I thought was really cool, and as kind of a gift, he got me this awesome translucent case called Atomic Purple. It's really easy to swap cases on the regular Switch, not so much the Switch Lite because it's all so compact, but we got it done, keeping the turquoise back because I thought it looked cool, and because the back case I got actually didn't fit quite right, but it worked out pretty well. I also kept the blue bezels on the screen because it's a pain to change that, and again, looks cool. I'll have a link in the description to that video if you're interested, but I won't waste any more time on it. Let's take a closer look at the Switch Lite itself. As mentioned, the controls are built in, unlike the original Switch, on which you slide on and off the Joy-Cons on either side. Here they're essentially fused to the casing with a very similar shape and feel, and it actually makes the device feel much better to play portably as it's just sturdier. If you've played both consoles, you'll know what I mean, but there's almost a bit of a flex on the regular Switch, whereas here everything is in one piece, and so that's not an issue. It's a small thing, but it lends to a much better portable experience. The Switch Lite also looks absolutely fantastic with the matte plastic finish and the really nice feeling buttons. That D-pad, especially, to me at least, is a huge upgrade over what's on the Joy-Con, as those have all the directions in separate buttons to accommodate for using a single Joy-Con as a controller in multiplayer games. Here, well, you can't take the controller off, so they can use a regular D-pad, and playing with it feels more akin to a Pro controller than Joy-Cons in my opinion. But unfortunately, we can't mention the controls without mentioning drift. Infamous, horrible Joy-Con drift, something I've experienced on the majority of my controllers that I've owned, at least my older ones because I've used them the most. Luckily, I haven't had any drift on my current Switch Lite, which is great, but it definitely can happen. If you look into it, there are reports online, and because the Switch Lite is all in one, there's not a whole lot that can be done about it. If you don't know what drift is, essentially it's when the controller, specifically the joystick, gives some kind of input you're not doing yourself, so it's moving in a direction that you're not actually moving it. It can be quite subtle in some cases. It screwed me up many times with friends in multiplayer games, although it's kind of nice to use that as an excuse. If drift is something that really concerns you, and fair enough if it does, the regular Switch is much better because on there at least you can swap the Joy-Cons. If you have a problem on the Switch Lite, you're kind of just stuck. Moving back to the design, the Switch Lite is smaller than the original Switch by a decent bit in both screen size and physical footprint. The Switch has a 6.2-inch screen and the Lite has a 5.5-inch screen, both with a resolution of 1280 by 720. And because the device is smaller but the resolution is the same, the Switch Lite actually has a slightly higher pixel density, making the display look a little bit sharper, which is a nice bonus. But bezels are also a bit thinner than the original Switch, which helps it feel a bit more sleek and modern, though not so much anymore when you bring in the newer OLED model Switch with its ultra-modern 7-inch screen, albeit still at a 720p resolution, meaning it has an even lower pixel density versus the LCD of previous Switch models. I am still disappointed there's no 1080p Switch, though it is a bit of a necessary sacrifice, with battery life of course being a huge concern on a handheld gaming console. I will say, if you're not concerned with the price point, the OLED Switch is probably the best choice for playing games portably just for the vibrant display, though the Lite, in my opinion, is more comfortable to actually use. And battery life, that's always going to be a huge pressing point for any portable device, and even more so when it comes to gaming. The Lite is said to get 3 to 7 hours of playtime on a single charge, with a huge variation depending on what you're playing. You'll be seeing near the low end of the 3 to 7 hours with Zelda Breath of the Wild, for example, as it's going to drain your battery much faster than a less intensive title. The regular Nintendo Switch, as of the 2019 revision, is supposed to get 4.5 to 9 hours, so a moderate amount more, and the OLED Switch is rated for the same amount of time. Given that it's made purely to be portable, it would be nice if the Lite had better battery life, but there had to be drawbacks for that compact design. And even with only 3 hours, say, that's a pretty decent sized gaming session before you can hopefully plug it in. I'd say battery life shouldn't be a concern, and it's not really a reason to buy one Switch over the other, as the sole deciding factor really should come down to the dock and TV support, and whether or not you need that. Where the Switch Lite excels the best is when you're playing games. Tech specs, battery life, all that aside, the Lite is just a fun machine, and easily the most comfortable way to play games portably. Having that all-in-one design just feels so much more stable and less flimsy in the hands. It's so easy to get immersed into whatever you're playing, and being able to do that anywhere from on the couch to on the bus is such an amazing experience. It's a ton of fun and a fantastic time for gaming on the go. It'll play any game the more expensive Switch can play, and feel great doing it. So is it worth buying for you? Well, it's worth the price of $200, but whether or not it's worth buying over a different Switch really comes down to the individual users and what you want to do with it. Locking yourself into solely playing portably forever with the Switch Lite is a big deal, and while you could always eventually just buy a normal Switch, at that point you might as well have done that in the first place. There's a good chance within the next year or two some kind of Switch Pro model comes out that offers 4K gameplay on your TV, possibly a 1080p display, things that I've personally been wanting forever now. But if and when this does come out, it'll be at a fairly high price point, as the price of the Switch hasn't changed since 2017, even with the newer Lite and OLED models coming out since, meaning if you were to buy any of the Switch models right now and a new one came out soon after, you really wouldn't be missing out too much, considering your console would be worth just as much as it was when you bought it. Also, keep in mind, while you're saving $100 getting the Switch Lite, Nintendo games are still extremely expensive. Even games from 2017 tend to still be $60. Some of them go on sale, but a lot of them don't. So just be aware of that. You'll probably dump a lot of money into the Switch, even if you didn't originally think you would. The Switch Lite is a really difficult device to recommend fully, because it's completely worth the price of $200, and it's a great console, but not having access to the entire half of what makes the Nintendo Switch experience so special is a really big downside, and one that could be, for a lot of people, a much bigger deal than you would originally expect. It's really easy to think, I don't need the TV, I just want to play portably, only later to regret this and wish that you could lounge on the couch, playing with a controller and watching the TV, not to mention the whole co-op multiplayer aspect of things. There's nothing quite like having friends over and booting up Mario Party as you all have your single little Joy-Con and yell at each other for an hour and a half as you keep getting screwed over. I joke, but honestly for me, the Switch, the best thing about it is playing with friends. You can do it wirelessly. It's not the same as playing it split screen on a TV. Ultimately, I think the Switch Lite is best bought as a secondary Nintendo Switch in a household where there's already one that connects to the TV, and then maybe someone wants their own individual device, and that's a totally fair situation. And the Switch Lite is the perfect machine for that. Maybe you're completely adamant about not needing the TV, and if so, fair enough, save some money and get the Lite. But otherwise, I highly recommend buying the normal Nintendo Switch at $300, or if that portable experience is what's most important to you, I strongly recommend going up to $350 for the OLED Switch that came out in 2021. The screen is bigger and it's significantly more vibrant. The colors just pop compared to the normal model, and there's been some nice quality of life changes. The kickstand is way better, and the console just feels more complete. It's a decent few upgrades for only $50, though don't get me wrong, the regular Switch is pretty much the exact same, besides those few external differences in the design. I'm actually really curious to hear your thoughts on all this, especially if you own a Switch Lite or have been considering one. Make sure you let me know in the comments below. So I think I'm right about done here here, but to sum this video up, the Switch Lite is worth it, but consider very carefully whether you really will be fine with giving up the entire switching element of the console. For some, that's not going to be an issue, but I do think most people in the long run would much prefer the normal Switch, even if it's a bit more expensive initially. If you found this video helpful, please consider leaving a like, and if you're into tech, maybe subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.